Maximo, Maximo. Middle name is P. Purisima. Then Young, Young.
Young, very nice family name.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm a retired major of the Philippine Army.
Uh-huh. And what is your birthday?
What was that?
What is your birthday? When were you born? When were you born?
Oh, I was born 30 July 1922.
13?
30 July 1922.
1932. So now you are 87?
87 years, sir.
Yeah. Sir, you look very young.
Well, thank you.
And where were you born?
I was born in Cebu.
Cebu?
Cebu is in central area of the Philippines.
Uh-huh.
That belongs to Visayas.
And tell me about your family background when you were growing up. What did your father and mother and your brothers and sisters do?
Well, my father is European. He's from, I could say, I forgot the place. Johor. Holland. He's from Holland.
Uh-huh.
Holland.
And what did he do?
He's from Holland. Then he immigrated to America before the war. When he was in America, he was commissioned and sent to the Philippines to fight against the Spanish-American War.
Ah.
So he was there at I forgot the name, but he was already there during the war before the Americans and the Filipinos.
Wow, so he was an American soldier.
Oh, yeah. After that, when he was more or less naturalized American citizen, he applied for as an American citizen.
Uh-huh.
And he was taken in the army and assigned to the Philippines in early 1910, something like that. And I was, my mother met my father sometime on 1920 after the World War II.
Tell me about the school you went through.
What's that?
Tell me about your educational background.
Oh,
Elementary, middle school, and high school here.
well, I was enrolled in a Catholic school. Although I was born in Cebu, I stayed long in Mactan Island. That's an island in front of Cebu City. I studied in a Catholic school up to intermediate, and then after intermediate, government school, and then the war broke out. I was not able to continue because I worked. Although during the Japanese time, the school was off and on because of the war.
You mean World War II?
What's that?
You mean the World War II?
Yeah, World War II.
Yeah. So what were you doing when the Korean War broke out? You
Oh,
were in the army?
No.
When the Korean War broke out, what were you doing?
No. I will start first with when during the time that there was no school, my father gave me a job in a shipping company. That's where I worked from the time. So when the war broke out, I was with the shipping company. That is the Motor Vessel Legazpi.
I see.
Legazpi that caters passengers from Manila, Visayas, Mindanao every 2 weeks.
When did you join the military?
Well, when I was working with the ship, as we were getting soldiers from the different parts of the Philippines, bringing them to Manila, the war broke out. It was at that time, on December 1941, where I was conscripted by the USAFE to be a member of the World War II.
So, World War II.
Yeah, World War II.
December 31st,
41.
1941.
December 8th, that's the time when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor.
But you said you were born in 1932.
22.
22. So then, now you are
87.
97.
97.
So you're, and where did you fight during the World War II?
Well, when our ship was commanded by the USAFE, we were held at Manila. We were stationed at Manila Bay in Fort Mills Corregidor. Fort Mills Corregidor is the command post of General MacArthur, where Colonel Sills, who is my immediate boss, was the head of the U.S. Army Transport Service, where the ship was made a part of the force.
So what was your main duty during the World War II in the ship? What did you do?
My duty with the ship was, I was an office boy. At the same time, I'm the one in charge of recording all cargoes of the ship and unloading the cargoes in different parts of the Philippines.
Got it.
From there, we were under the control of the USAPE on December 8th when we arrived at Manila. Because during the time before the war, there were already plans that the Japanese will declare war or something like that. So I think MacArthur thought then of planning getting soldiers and bringing them to Manila to establish a defense for the Philippines.
Right.
All right. From 8 December 1941, we were in Manila up to about the latter part of January 1942. Now, during the war in Bataan and Corridor, the army was in dire need of supplies. We did have food, everything. So President Quezon offered to MacArthur the use of some of the vessels, Philippine vessels, that were conscripted by the U.S. Army to form part of the force of the USAFE. All right. At the 2 weeks before the end of January, our ship was directed to go to an island in Visayas, Panay. That's the birthplace of Rojas. Rojas then was the president.
So when did you leave for Korea?
Well, after that was 1941, I continued serving the USAFE until 1948. 48, I was sent to U.S. to study at the Armored School. When I came back, I was instructed to organize a group, the 10th Bay City, to form part of a unit that will be used other countries.
Yeah. And when did you leave Korea?
Well, we organized the 10th Bay City and we left for Korea on September 15, 1950.
September 15, 1950?
1950.
51?
Yeah, war, during the war.
No. Was it 1950 or 51?
50.
50. That's the day that MacArthur landed in Incheon.
Well, the war, I think, 1950. Or
Yeah.
50, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right. We left the Philippines 15 September 1950.
You left for Korea September 15 of
50.
1950.
Yes, 50.
Let me ask this question. Did you learn anything about Korea? Did you know anything about Korea, Korean history before you left for Korea?
Well, it was not taken early yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. But I already heard about Korea when you were invaded. Korea was invaded by the Japanese in 1910. 1910.
Yes.
And your people were not allowed to study for 35 years. Not a single man was allowed to study.
Exactly.
I know that.
So that was one of the most atrocious form of colonial control. And so where did you land in Korea? When you landed in Korea, where were you?
We landed at Busan. Busan.
Busan.
Yeah. And that is on the 19th of September, after 4 days travel.
Wow.
4 days travel.
19th of September.
Yeah.
Wow. That was fast because it's close, you know?
Busan.
Yeah.
The port of Busan. And Busan then was the only area from Taegyo, north, east, up to Busan, were the only place where the South Koreans were holding.
Yeah.
Of course, the North Koreans occupied almost 85% of South Korea.
So tell me about your impression, your image of Busan. How was it? How was it at the time? How was Korean economy? How was people in the street? Tell me the details. Okay?
Yes. When we arrived at South Korea, I saw children, plenty of children and refugees mobbing. And the whole town of Busan is filled with people. Aside from the military, US and Korean soldiers that were also stationed there. And there were plenty of tents being erected by the US Army. While when we were allowed to go down at Busan and then taken to Miryang. That is about 35 kilometers north of Busan. We were told to build our tent, and then we were given sleeping bags. The place where we slept that night was rice field, very vast rice field. Now, I was a first sergeant then. I was surprised.
You were first sergeant?
First sergeant of reconnaissance company of the 10th BCT.
10th BCT?
Yeah, 10th BCT. That was the first BCT that was sent to Korea. The 10th BCT is composed of reconnaissance company, heavy weapons company, third artillery, airborne company, Baker company, Charlie, engineer, medical, and replacement. That composed the whole 10th BCT.
How many soldiers were there? You were in the first detachment, right?
Yeah, first batch. The first batch of Korean soldiers was almost 1,800, to include the replacement.
So you belong to 10 BCT, battalion combat team.
Reconnaissance company of the 10th BCT combat team.
So how was the battle situation at the time there?
Well, you know, I was surprised when the soldiers who were sleeping, they were issued sleeping bags, were already awakened at 4 o'clock. I was surprised. So as a first sergeant, since I hold a company, I went out. I found out that most of them were putting out their sleeping bags because there were snakes inside the sleeping bag. Now I don't know, but when I went to my sleeping bag, I also found out that there were 8 snakes in my sleeping bag. I can just figure how it can enter, because when you have a sleeping bag, you have to zip it.
Right.
Yeah, zip it. But I don't know. I found out later that the 8 snakes were there already. So that was the confusion early in the morning. Already, following that, we were moved to Sariwon. We were moved to Sariwon from Beriang.
Yeah.
From Sariwon, we were absorbed by the 3rd U.S. Army under Yersol. The whole battalion was attached to the 3rd U.S. Army.
Division. Yeah.
Division.
3rd Division.
Third division. Now, during that time, there was already a landing in the north. I forgot the place. There's a landing. And most of the soldiers, Korean soldiers, North Koreans, were already occupying. So when MacArthur landed in the middle, the soldiers were divided.
Yeah.
Now, MacArthur occupied part of Pyongyang, and as a reconnaissance company, part of the 3rd U.S. Army, we were made as a reconnaissance company to secure the supply line from South Korea to Pyongyang. We were given an area of 81 kilometers, 81 miles. We have to patrol that every evening from 8 o'clock up to 4 o'clock in the morning. So on November 11, we received an order that there were 3,000 smugglers along the areas from South Korea to North Korea. So the reconnaissance company, who is given a mission to look for enemy, were the first one to look for them. Now, I was in charge since I graduated from Fort Knox for 1 year, Armored School Fort Knox. I graduated. The other officer with me was Lieutenant Cleofy. He was the platoon leader, and I was the platoon sergeant. He picked me up because I was the one who graduated from Fort Knox and knows about motorized army.
So you were headed to North Korea, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And tell me about, did you go to Pyongyang?
Yes, later on, yeah. I will tell you because we were given a mission to secure the area. So on 11 November at 9 o'clock, we left our place going to Shinji. That was the place where the 3rd Army Intelligence said that the smugglers, South Korean, North Koreans were hiding there. So before we have to go to Shinji, we have to pass Myeodong. Myeodong is about 2 kilometers south of Shinji. Now, before we reached Myeodong, our truck hit a mine, that mine. The truck more or less blew up, and the soldiers that were there were not hurt. So we stopped and tried to find out what the matter is. From there on, our tactical officer informed us. From there on, we should be observant because we're expecting an enemy encounter during the time. So we continue moving to Shinji through Myeodong. When we reach the bend, when all our units, because when we mob, our tanks, there were infantry behind our tanks. In all tanks, there are enemies, able and Baker companies were distributed behind the tanks as a shell. Now, when we reached a bend, there was a sort of a bend going that way. Okay.
Yeah.
From there, we were surprised by a large number of fire directed to us as we were going directly to Senji through Yudong. The first tank was an NCO. The second tank was our platoon leader. The third tank was an NCO. I was the platoon sergeant of the reconnaissance platoon. And then following me is another tank. Now, when there was a fire, everybody stopped. Nobody can move because it was a very surprise. So what I did, I look at my periscope. You know, a tank has a periscope. You can see what is going outside through a mirror. I look at it. I found out on the other side, there were already perimeters. Soldiers dug in, about eight. And since I cannot turn, I have my gunner was asking me for target. So what I did, I back up my tank and want to face the enemy. But when I back up my tank, there was a ravine, a canal. So my tank, instead of going that way, went down. So, and there was a continuous fire all over plenty. Just imagine, more than 3,000 soldiers, North Korean soldiers. So what I did, as I look at the periscope, I found out the soldiers were already standing. They were already pointing and calling the others to conference. So I was already afraid that they might attack. So what I did, since I cannot fire my gun, my 76 millimeter, because it was going down, when I tried to put it cannot because it was in mountain. I got out of the tank. I got out of the tank and opened the hatch and load the machine gun, caliber 50. A tank has a machine gun caliber 50. I started firing at the top post, firing with my machine gun. Every 5 rounds is a treasure bullet. So more or less, I knew how to distribute my fire on the upper side. As I started firing, they were dispersed. They were running after, they were jumping over the foxholes. And I continued firing until my soldiers who were with me stood up and started firing. Now, we continued about 45 minutes firing. Then after that, there was a support from our artillery supporting us, firing at the enemy. Now, after 45 minutes, they were already captured. My soldiers went up and get some of the North Korean soldiers and caught them as houses. Now, far away were U.S. Army officers observing me as I was firing my machine gun. And he came to me and thanked me for doing, because there was no fire then. It was only my fire that activated to more or less fire back.
Wow.
Now, after a head count in the record, and I'll give you later on, there were 42 dead and
42.
about 300 wounded North Koreans. And then when the next unit that will occupy the place came, we moved forward. Towards our mission as a reconnaissance is to look for the enemy. When we find the enemy, we give it to the army. So they continue firing. We continue. Then from there we went to Shinji,
Yeah.
north. And then we found out some of the North Koreans were hiding inside a cave in Shinji. So we were able to more or less capture them and turn it over to the intelligence men of the U.S. And then from there on, after that, we returned to our base to more rest.
Where?
In Sariwon.
Sariwon.
Yeah. Not of Sariwon. Not exactly, sir. That's a town near Sariwon. Very near.
So you were in the first battle of Philippine 10 battalion combat team.
Yeah. I'll give you.
Yeah, in Mudong. And
Mudong.
then you were in the Shinjin battle. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What were you thinking? You were not afraid at the time?
Well, I cannot see my soldiers moving. They were hiding because of they were just there on top, and they have the very stalker. So that's the only thing I can do. I have to do something because I have the weapons to do it, and I sacrifice myself going out in spite of the fire to fire my machine gun to disturb them so that my soldiers can move.
That's amazing. Did you get medal for that?
Yes, in fact, the Korean government gave me. I'll give you a copy.
Yeah. What kind of medal was it?
I was given the highest.
When did you get it?
Well, it was given to me 2016. 2016,
Oh, okay.
after going over
Yeah.
my records.
So
but
from-
our government, Philippine government, gave me a gold cross.
Gold Cross.
Yeah.
Gold Cross.
Yes.
When did you get that?
I got that about 60 years after.
Wow, that's an honor.
I was,
Very nice. And from Sariwon, did you retreat because Chinese coming in, right?
yeah.
Tell me about it. When the Chinese began to coming in, intervene, how was it?
Now, when on 22, we moved forward because, the North Koreans came back. You remember, came back. And then they established a line along the demarcation line. So we already have another part of the demarcation line at Yuldong.
Where?
Yuldong.
Yuldong. Yep.
Yuldong or Yuldong. On 22 April 1951, the first Tet Offensive was made by the Chinese.
Yultong was in September or was it April?
April.
Yeah.
April 22. That is Yuldong.
Yeah.
Mudong was November 11, 1950.
So you were in the Yultong battle too?
Yes, I was.
Tell me about it. How was it?
Well, since we were in the defensive position, we were given a line of 800 yards. On our left are the Puerto Ricans. On our right are the Turks. In our direct front is the Chinese communists. There are about 40,000 in front of us.
Wow.
40,000 communists in front of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those were the Chinese that attacked us on the night of 22 April.
April, yeah.
Yeah. They continue attacking. Now, the North Koreans cannot penetrate our area, but the Turkish left the area. According to them, their own artillery is firing at them, so they had to leave. So the North Koreans were able to penetrate here. That's why one of our captain, Yap, died. Captain Yap, and one of our officers died. It was in that battle where I have about 100, it was in that battle where the 10 BCT had 112 died in action. Casualties.
Yultong battle was one of the severe battle there, right? So
Yeah.
And the Philippine soldiers were able to deter them so that the Seoul has actually survived, right? Yeah.
We were attached to the 3rd U.S. Army.
Yes.
And we were assigned at that place, at Yoldong. And it was at that place where it was very dark, they started making noise at 6 o'clock in the evening. Because it was dark already, they mixed a lot of noise, shouting. But at 11 o'clock, that's where they start advancing. Although I cannot see it, but the figure, one soldier, one Chinese soldier holds a rifle, and following him without rifles are 7 North Korean soldiers.
Do you know anything about Gloucester Height?
What's that?
Gloucester. It's a 235 hill. 235.
We were very far.
Okay.
But I know our left side were Puerto Ricans and our right side are the Turkish. But they were able to penetrate. But in our line, that's why the North Koreans suggested that we more or less write a sort of armistice so that we have to stop fighting.
So when did you leave Korea?
Well, I left Korea 1951, October.
And did you participate in the Heartbreak Ridge battle? Heartbreak Ridge battle.
What's that?
Heartbreak Ridge.
Oh, that was after I left. That was the 20th BCT already.
I see.
The 10th BCT is already the activities of the 10th BCT is only limited to Myeongdong and Yoldong. And Yoldong, that's where we have heavy casualties.
So Yultong battle was your last battle.
Yeah.
So, what were you thinking? Did you think that you could survive or are you going to be killed?
Well, in war, you cannot choose. If you are unlucky, you get hit. But look, there were about 3,000 soldiers firing at me. It was firing on top of the tank.
Wow. That's amazing.
I could hear the bullets whistling at my tank. But I continued, I didn't mind it.
So, summarize, tell young children in Philippines what is the importance of the battles that you engaged in the Korean War history. What is the most important contribution you made in the battles that you fought in the history of Korean War?
Well, according to the order that I received, I more or less help the soldiers get to fight because they saw me fighting. So that was a sort of an incentive for them to fight.
After you left Korea, have you been back to Korea?
Oh, yes, several times.
When?
Oh, I think I moved there more than 8 times.
8 times. When was the last time that you were there?
The last time when I was sent there to receive the ship that was donated by the Koreans, Imis Rizal, Jose Rizal.
So when was it? 2016?
That was June. The shipmaker.
Huh?
The shipmaker.
Shipmaker?
Yeah. The one who made the ship I forgot the name.
Right. Anyway, 2009. When 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when was it?
In Busan,
Yeah.
where the shipbuilding is.
Yeah. When was it?
20, I think it's 21 June this year.
This year.
Yeah, this year, yeah. I was there.
So, how was it when you see the different Korea? Okay, you were there in 1950, 51.
Yeah.
Now Korea. Can you compare that? Tell me the details.
Well, when I went to Korea in 1950, all the mountains were all green. But when I went back after 50 years, the first time I went there was 1997. There was an abrupt change in buildings, bridges. Before, you only have one bridge, Now you have 38 or 50. Yeah. And then your condominiums are all all grasses. Before all grasses, now no more grasses, all buildings. In other words, you have survived your hardship during the Korean War. And the people I could say are responsible. You, people who were born 1950, 50, 60, 70, 80, were the ones who struggled to make Korea great again.
Yeah.
Because during the time when I was there, most of your forefathers were not educated. So the Japanese will tell them like this, oh, I pity them. Some of them we went there, some of them were staying in caves. Yeah. I also was able to stay with them in caves.
Yeah.
But now, no more caves. Hotel, condo, aircon, office, left and right. And your women are beautifuler compared to last time.
So now Korea is 11th largest economy in the world. Can you believe that? Did you think that Korea would become like this today when you left?
Oh, you know, North Korea will never improve because they are restricted by their bombers. But Korea, boy, you are most modern than Japan. Before Japanese come to your place, they tell you what to do. Now, you go there and tell them what to do. Yeah.
So are you proud to be the Korean War veteran?
Yes, I'm very, very proud. In fact, I told them, no, when we were at Korea, we used to get children to help us, to assist us. In fact, most of the children, when I was there in 1950, they know how to disassemble a carbine, garan. And they sometimes use, and these children, very industrious, very, very industrious, your children. They shine our shoes, cook for us, anything. And you know what we do? Every Saturday, Sunday, we give them food. Because during our Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when we ate less, we give them canned goods. They bring it home. And there's plenty. And you know, one time I give one child, a boy, 5 bread taken from the US. You know what I did? He said, Eto. And he did 3. He said, what will you do? I'll give this to my brother, my mother, and my father. See, a child like that can more or less help the situation of the family.
That's very nice, isn't it?
I really admire the children. And that must be the reason why all of you, including you, are very, very industrious. That's why look at Korea. You're number 20. 20?
Number 11.
Oh, good.
Now it's the 11th largest economy in the world. Yep.
You might overtake Japan.
No,
Yeah.
Japan is third in the world, so they are very
You know,
strong. But I know where you are coming from, and I understand what you are saying. But still, Korea is divided.
Yeah.
You know, and next year will be 70th anniversary of the breakout of the Korean War. We don't have a peace treaty yet. Do you have any special message to the Korean people?
Well, it's one thing. On 2005, your ambassador here, I attended a meeting of the economic, of the more or less industrial of Korea. He told me, he says, by 2030, Korea is seeing to it that your economy will be in par with the Koreans. He told me that. He told me, look, we'll be giving you arms, infrastructure, we'll help your bridges, and some of your infrastructure, he said. Now, last June, in front of the ambassador, the President Ambassador Han, I mentioned that to the Coast Guard who were present. I told them, and Ambassador Han was present. I said, on 2005, an ambassador of South Korea called me and told me that the aim of South Korea will be to make the Philippines progressive, that by 2030, the economy of the Philippines should be on par with the Koreans. By that time, right now, you're very, very far ahead. But just the same, the fact that you thought of it, we're very proud that you are thinking us on our progress.
Absolutely. Koreans were able to rebuild our nation because you came and fought in the battle of Myeongdong, Yultong, Heartbreak Ridge, all these important battles. Otherwise, Korea could become communized, and we're not going to be what we are right now. So that's why we are doing this. Do you know that in Philippines, in World History class, do they teach about Korean War?
What's that?
Do they teach about the Korean War in Philippine history class? Do you know? Whether they
Yeah,
teach
I know that you were occupied in 1910 by the Japanese.
No. Do they teach about the Korean War in the history class in the school here in Philippines?
Yeah.
Do they teach?
The Secretary of Education is trying to insert information about the Korean War so that the children will know how the Philippines helped the Korean.
I want to look at the history textbook, see if how much is being covered on the Korean War.
Yeah, you know, some of the children, the Philippines is divided to 1,000 islands. So spreading the news takes time.
Okay.
We use radio, but all of the people here are hearing the radio and they know.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your fight and honorable service. This is my great opportunity to hear from the soldier who were in the Myeongdong and Yultong battle, and you were in Pyongyang and Shinjin. That's the first dispatchment of the Philippine soldiers to the Korean War. And you made a significant contribution. So I want to thank you, sir. And thank you for your fight, and thank you for being loyal to Korean people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.